Well, thanks everybody for coming by. Before we get started, I just wanted to welcome everybody to Fordham University and thank you on behalf of Fordham's Media and Entertainment Alliance. As some of you may know, this is part of our larger lecture series, Digital Media Disruption. This is actually the fourth in our series, and the other three are on our website, which is miafordham.com. So if you want to check out the videos of the other ones, they'll be on the website. Let's see. And we'll also be posting this video on the website probably in a week or two as well. So I guess without further ado, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our panel.
Hello, thank you. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
My name is Bozena Mierzejewsk. I'm a professor of communications and media management here at Fordham University. And I'm especially happy that we host this panel today. There's a few reasons for that. Not only because it's Fordham, but also publishing is very close to my heart. I've actually been researching publishing since 2003, which is exactly 10 years. I started with academic publishing, ebooks, and taught business of books in Switzerland and Sweden. Today, in Fordham, we actually don't teach book publishing, but we do teach media management, and media entrepreneurship. So I hope many of the students will find this particular industry interesting because it is not always the hippiest and the sexiest industries where the students will say, oh, I want to learn more about publishing or book publishing. No, it's like, really, do we have to do that? Well, I hope in this panel we figure out that actually is one of the most exciting sectors right now through the changes that's going on. How are we gonna go on today? We have 60 minutes. So first we're gonna let our panelists, after my introduction, speak for a few minutes. Then I'll start with a little moderated discussion and we go on to questions to the public. So please get ready with your questions. You will have plenty of opportunity to ask. Well, we have three companies represented here, and they are all three in publishing, but they are very, very different. So we start with the oldest in a business, although not oldest in a panel, I think. I actually didn't check that out. We have Scholastic. Who have not heard about Scholastic? Well, it is a very well-established company. They want to publish Harry Potter in US. And they are very particular and interesting how they deal with digital content right now. So from Scholastic, we have Mallory Kass. She's an editor, and she also is part of the team responsible for the New York Times bestseller, The 39 Clues. Is even here. And she also works on other projects, which is Ruthless by Chris Howard, Daughters of the Sea by Katrin Larsky, and some upcoming exciting titles like A Snicker of Magic. Well, a second company that we have is not that old, but is actually quite disruptive what they're doing. It's Open Road Media. They started in 2009 as Open Road Media. They started 2009 as an all digital publisher. It's actually the idea behind was to take digital rights of already published all the books and put them online. And 4 years later, 3,000 titles online later. Here we go. So we're gonna hear more about. And then finally we have Tumblr. Well, again, a company probably everybody is on Tumblr. Not even heard about Tumblr. Microblogging, you can share it or we can actually not share it with your friends. And I checked today, there is 118 million blogs and 54 billion posts. Well, oh, I didn't introduce Nina. 1 second, I'm gonna go to you as a person.
You said the company, but not you.
Sorry,
No,
Nina,
it's fine.
expert on entertainment and ebooks industry, and actually she works for many digital companies, one of them being Wattpad, and she has a master's from Toronto, so means you're Canadian.
So I actually work for Open Road Media. I don't work for Wattpad.
Yeah, you right now Open Road Media, correct?
Yeah.
And in Tumblr, I go back, platform that is popular. Actually, they've been in the media recently. I think you're gonna celebrate the acquisition today. $1.1 billion, one of the exciting takeover acquisition recently. And Tumblr is actually active in publishing for already some time. So I hope Rachel is gonna tell us more. Rachel is actually an outreach team specializing in publishing, non-profit and cultural organizations, but she's well experienced in publishing. She previously was community manager at Bookish, director of public programs and Housing Works Bookstore Cafe, and also she's also a co-creator and co-editor of New York Times bestseller, Not Quite What I Was Planning. Well, I don't know what you're planning, but book publishing is under siege. They've been attacked already for some kind of years. Amazon? Who buys books right now in bookshops? Well, I don't. Well, but already yesterday's announcement on Barnes & Nobles, they're going to scale down on the network of the stationery shops. That already says something. And who remembers about Borders? Well, some of you do. A second element that is affecting is actually new formats. Book publishing is sort of 500 years old. E-book, 5, 10, or maybe 12, if you count the very early ones. That's a very recent development in the history of a book. And last but not least, self-publishing. Would it mean that we don't need publishers at all? Well, I close with a citation of a professor from Oxford University, who in his book, In the Books in a Digital Age, said, "We are living through a revolution of sorts. And one of the few things you can say for certain about the revolution is that you know we're in the middle of one, but you have no idea when and where will it end." I suspect tonight we're going to have lots of topics about the revolution, the digital, and also about amazing opportunities that digital is bringing to the publishing industry. And get ready your questions, but before that, I welcome our panelists one by one to present what do they think right now and about their companies, what's going on in book publishing. So, who's going to start first? Okay.
Thank you. Hey everybody. As a reminder, my name is Mallory Kass, and I'm an editor at Scholastic. And one of the projects I work on is the New York Times best-selling series, The 39 Clues. This is the most recent book that came out that was written by David Baldacci, which was really exciting for us. And The 39 Clues, how many of you are familiar with children's young adult publishing? Okay, great. How many of you have heard of The 39 Clues? Really? Okay. That's awesome. For those of you who aren't as familiar, it is the groundbreaking first multi-platform series for kids. So it uses traditional print and ebooks, each of which come with 6 game cards, which contain unique digital codes that become the reader's key to unlocking the online experience, which is the third element in online game. And what's really special about the 39 Clues is that you can engage in any way that feels right to you as a reader, as a parent, as a teacher. You can read the books alone, which are fabulous. You can read the books and play the game. And for our super fans, you can read the books, play the game, solve puzzles, interact with other fans on our online message board. So basically the world is as rich as the kid wants it to be, which we found to be really exciting and really satisfying. The story is about Amy and Dan Cahill, who on the day of their grandmother's funeral are given the choice between $1 million and a clue. So the clue is actually the first of 39 clues, which is the key to unlocking a historic power that's been hidden around the globe by the Cahill family. And it turns out, I don't know if you know this, but most famous people throughout history have been Cahills. Napoleon, Amelia Earhart, the founder of Tumblr, anyone who's been sort of a mover and a shaker has actually been looking for the clues. So Rachel and I are going to talk about that later. I know what's really going on. And it's really a global adventure. It's global in terms of the locations where the kids go. The clues are hidden all over the planet. But it's also global because we've really created and tapped into this international community. The books have been published in over 27 countries. We have kids on every continent logging into our website. We have 16 million books in print, 2 million registered users from all over the world. We have 1,200 new registered users every day. And I think we're up to now almost 1,000 posts on our message boards a day. And it's been really exciting. It's something we're we continue to learn about, it's something we continue to experiment with, but at its heart, we've just found these kids who are passionate about these characters, passionate about this story, and what's really exciting and a challenge for us, but one we really enjoy, is figuring out how to best use technology to connect with kids, to tell the story across multiple platforms, and really connect with different types of readers. We're following up on the success with a new series called The Infinity Ring, which published last year and is also a New York Times bestseller. And in the fall, we're launching our first fantasy multi-platform series called Spirit Animals, which we hope will allow us to connect with a whole new audience and connect with a whole new type of reader. And we're really excited. We're going to continue to innovate, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about that a little more. I'm just going to quickly bring up the 39 Clues website so you have a little idea of what I'm talking about. All right, the multi-platform editor should be able to do this. So this is the home page, and you can just see that there's a lot right away for the kids to do. They can read summaries of the books, which our mega fans don't need to do because they're the ones who tell us when we get something wrong, and they're very vocal about that on our message boards. These are the links to the online missions. You can keep track of your status through medals, and I just want to show you guys quickly the message boards, which when I'm having a bad day at work, this is my favorite thing to do. Sometimes I post as a character, which makes the kids really excited. Here's one of our characters, Evan, asking the kids to solve the code. And it's a really great way to engage kids, make them part of the story, make them part of the world. They also generate content, which is great because they consume it much, much faster than we could ever churn out. And these kids have really embraced this community. They consider themselves Cahills. They have a lot of family pride, and it's been really, really fun, and something we'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay. I wasn't going to put anything on the screen. Can I just talk here?
Yes, you can talk.
Is that okay with you? Hi, I'm Rachel Fershleiser. I work at Tumblr on the outreach team specializing in publishing. You may have noticed as you're disrupting the industry that people use publishing to mean a lot of different things. And so that's one thing I would just point out is like Tumblr is publishing in the sense that there are 118 million blogs being published every day. So like we're a CMS. But I come from the book publishing world, and I do a lot of connecting those two things. So just really quickly, I'm very, very old. I started in book publishing in 2002, and I was at HarperCollins and Simon & Schuster. I was in like totally traditional publishing, book publicity. I learned a lot. I was really bored and miserable, and I left. And then I started doing a bunch of freelance journalism, and I was a research assistant for Freakonomics, and then I started volunteering at Housing Works Bookstore, which is a nonprofit bookstore down in Soho. And I loved it there, and I was like a volunteer, and then I was a part-time staffer, and then I was a full-time staffer, and eventually I became the director of public programs, where I was putting on 200 events a year, from like author readings and poetry readings and panels to like a Bjork concert, a Black Keys concert, a Dirty Projectors concert. I was doing all the marketing, all the PR, and all the web stuff. Would anyone who's ever worked in nonprofit like to tell me what my marketing budget was? Very good. So that's when I started using free online tools, and that's when I started using. I basically like became an internet professional in the basement of a used bookstore, which is not like the usual path, but nothing's the usual path anymore, I think is my point in saying all this. And we started a Tumblr, and we were the first bookstore on Tumblr, and it made a huge difference for us. We just went from being this local, best-kept secret, like dusty, used bookstore just for the neighborhood to like this national voice. And people knew what our events were about, and people wanted to come visit the store when they came to New York. And they would call me up, like when the Wall Street Journal wanted to do one of those articles on like, is the book event dead? Is the indie bookstore dead? No. But they would always call me to comment, and we would get Google alerts from people being like, I've never been to New York, but Housing Works is my favorite bookstore, and someday I'm going to go there. And that to me is the power of giving your brand a voice, right? Like whether you're a bookstore, a publisher, an author, a band, like whatever, you can make people feel like they know what you're about even if they've never met you. And at the same time I was working there, I was doing this totally separate web project where we asked people to tell their life story in 6 words. which became the 6-Word Memoir Project, which was a website, and then it was a book, and then that book became a Times bestseller, and then there was another book, and another book, and another book, and another book, which we then had to like turn back onto the internet and promote, right? So basically everything I've done in the last 10 years has been like book publishing and the internet and like making them enhance one another, which is why while I am on my soapbox here, I would like to say that I've always found the idea of disruption like a very complicated concept, because people who have these really amazing digital ideas will walk into traditional publishers and be like, we're here to disrupt your industry. And that's not something people want to get on board with. And I think that there are a lot of different ways of looking at it, right? So I think that so much of what is happening, right, like companies like Open Road are like, they're enhancing publishing, and they're finding like new ways of reaching audiences, and they're finding new ways of getting authors the audience they deserve. And that's beautiful and amazing. And so that's a lot of what I do at Tumblr, right? Like we don't publish books. We are involved in the book publishing community in a couple of different ways. Oh, sorry. Does everyone know what Tumblr is? Raise your hand if you have a Tumblr. All right. Yeah, so it's blogging, sort of, but it's blogging with a built-in social network, and it's really, really passion-based. So we have fandom communities around like teen series and also around like David Foster Wallace and all kinds of stuff. So we have publishers using Tumblr to reach fans and book bloggers and bookstores. We have a lot of librarians, we have a lot of booksellers, and we have a lot of authors with their own presences. And it's just this ecosystem where you can be like an undergrad at the University of Iowa, and you can show up and start writing about a book you loved, and you might hear from the publisher or from a bookstore that's having an event, or from the author themselves, or just from other people who are psyched on that. And as someone who was a very geeky teenager before that was a possibility, I'm very, very happy to see that happen. Additionally, a lot of publishers are using Tumblr to source amazing content. So there have now been over 70 book deals for stuff from like hipster puppies and cats wearing casts, to like Ivyland, which is a sci-fi novel. Fuck, I'm in My 20s was like a kind of humorous comic about that topic. There's a book called Adulting that came out a couple months ago, which is like a humorous but serious advice guide for like learning to grow up, like get yourself car insurance, like a savings account, all that kind of stuff. And so we try to support those projects, we throw them parties, we help them pitch stories, and we also, I like match make people with agents. So we're a place where publishers are reaching readers, where authors are reaching readers, and also where authors are reaching publishers. So I just see us as a real connector between sort of all the pieces of the ecosystem.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. My name is Nina, and I work at Open Road. I am going to move to that podium because I have to show this little video clip that hopefully will be demonstrated for you all. So I work at Open Road, and Open Road was started about 4 years ago by a woman named Jane Friedman. And since 4 years ago, we have acquired over 4,000 titles. Predominantly, we work as an ebook publisher and an ebook distributor, but we also are moving a little bit into print, which is something we'll probably get to talking about a little bit later. And with our titles, originally we started mostly as a literary fiction titles. So Alice Walker, huge names that were all available in print, but had never been distributed in e-before, so that was something that we started with. But now we run the whole gamut. We have erotica series, we have romance, we have mysteries, we have children's and YA, and we have lifestyle books as well. So we have both ebooks in all sorts of different genres. So even though we've expanded hugely since the beginning and we've moved into all these different genres, one of the things that we've always done that has been pretty much the same the way through is market our books or our ebooks 365 days a year. So that means for us, with that volume of titles, that really means that we do a lot of author brand marketing, because if you have Lawrence Block, for example, and you have 70 titles by him, how are you going to market 70 titles every day of the year to keep people interested in his backlist? So what we do is we focus on the author and try to build an author brand. And one of the ways that we do that is with video content, and that's something that we've done a lot with on Tumblr as well.
I lived in a family, I suppose, that didn't gossip, among other things. We were not a family that read. The house was not full of books. There was a lot of raw material of life I was unaware of.
A date which will live in infamy.
World War II changed my life. I was 17 years old, went to West Point. I was well into a military career. I was 32 years old. I was married, had 2 small children, and decided to change my life and become a writer. I decided to write or perish. It was like starting life from scratch. I changed my name. I was actually born James Horowitz, and I was on my own. And when you take off completely alone, that first time, it's unforgettable. You suddenly feel a pair of wings on you, and you can write something that you think is glorious. There's a freedom in writing. I admire myself more on the page than I do in reality. I didn't want to become too masculine a writer because my life had been masculine. It comes from life, but it is not life. It is something else. It is a poem of life. There comes a time in life when you realize that everything is a dream. Only those things that have been written down have any possibility of being real. That's all that exists in the end, what's been written down.
So we create these mini documentaries all in-house for, I would say, the majority of our authors. And that is one of the ways that I think Open Road is doing something really different, because it's hard to speak to people. There's so much written content out on the internet, but video and people who enjoy books, there's even less video content available for them. So our videos are really strong, they're really interesting and extremely well done. So we distribute them a lot on Tumblr. We also work with biography.com, the Daily Beast, and other news media to distribute our videos and try to promote our authors both as a brand and create really interesting pieces of content out there that will hopefully get retumbled or retweeted or re-Facebooked and everything like that. So I think that's a pretty safe introduction to Open Road.
I think
I'm in love.
I know, I love that. Can I put my nose in for one sec? I don't know how many of you guys have worked in publishing, but like when she says they market 365 days a year, that's a big deal. Like in traditional publishing, the book comes out and 3 months later, like your publicist won't return your calls.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So I just feel like if you don't have the context, you don't realize like what a big deal that is, and also that like most book video looks terrible, and they just tell the author to like make themselves a book trailer.
Yeah.
So like that being awesome actually is like really, really rare.
And we also do something new with our video content where they actually film the author for 8 hours. And what will happen is we'll have these little 2-minute pieces, but then we also build video pieces around topical events. So we have one for the Stonewall riots. There's an anniversary happening. We have one for Halloween. We have one for Christmas. We have them for we have one for National Book Awards. So we create these little pieces of content that are used at conferences, and they're more likely to get picked up in the media. So that's a way that we're able to bring a lot of different authors together that might not be in the same conversation originally.
Well, that was a kind of impressive to see what happening to a book. Actually, my first question, do you think the book as you hold it in a hand, without the little codes, is it going to survive? Do we going to have kids reading books in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, absolutely. Our most recent data suggests that kids gravitate more towards print than but actually, like, I was started in publishing as a total Luddite. I had just finished a master's in Victorian literature and thought that this symbolized the demise of basically the world. And within 2 weeks, I was a complete convert and realized that there are so many different ways to tell stories. There are so many different ways to connect with readers. this is one great way, but Scholastic's the largest children's book publisher, so we publish books for all types of readers, all types of kids. If this has proved a fantastic way not only to get traditional readers, but also reluctant readers who are engaged through the games and then connect with our characters and our story. But to answer your question, the Victorianist in me says absolutely, because I'm such a book fetishist, I love holding, I love smelling it, but the publisher and the editor in me doesn't really care. I consider myself an editor and a publisher of stories, and the vehicle doesn't matter to me as much as making sure it gets in the hand and in the brain and in the heart of the right reader. So we're gonna continue to innovate. We're gonna publish books. We're gonna publish content in whatever form works for kids, teachers, parents, librarians. I'm pretty sure it'll stay in this format for a really long time, but if it doesn't, it's not going to affect the quality of the reading experience. We're still going to have fantastic stories that are going to have a lot of resonance for a lot of readers.
I agree, basically. I mean, I would say, no, the physical book is not going away. And actually, especially for children, I think it's going to last longer because they hug them, they chew on them, they read them in bed, people buy them for presents, all that. I think that there will always be some people who want to read paper books. I'm not a big fetishist. But like, I guess what I mean by that is like, I don't like sniff them and touch them, and I will scribble a phone number in a book if I need to, which like when I worked in a rare bookstore, that was like, I'm a very much believer in the content in the book. That said, I still prefer paper books just because like I throw it in my tote bag and I go, and I don't have to turn it off on the airplane, and I don't have to worry about batteries, and it's actually a really efficient little device, the paperback book. And then I think what's going to happen is it's going to go two directions, right? So the stuff that you're just reading, like for fun on the plane, for fun on the beach, like to consume the story, I think is going to go digital much faster. Like for instance, people thought that cookbooks were going to like disappear because of Epicurious, and actually cookbooks are doing amazingly well. The ones that are beautiful and photographic and inspiring. So that's sort of what I think is going to happen. The books that are not adding anything by being a physical book are going to go away much faster than the books for collectors and fans. So sort of.
I think that's an interesting point that you said, that the book that doesn't add anything by being in print, because in the industry it's still really hard, and this is something that Open Road discovered when we were launching frontlist titles. There's still very much a precedent that's set for getting review coverage in trade publications as well as in popular media. A print edition is still an important part, and it seems to, for some people, add a level of legitimacy or quality, even though I don't really think that's true.
That I think is going to go, though.
And that in the last year, I think when I've been at Open Road for 2 years, and when we first started doing frontlist, that was a much bigger issue than it is today. People are much happier to take a PDF or an EPUB than they ever were before.
When I started in book publishing, the New York Times Book Review would not review a paperback original.
Right.
And now they will.
Yeah.
So I think there's evidence
that it's moving away from what the format is and to what it actually, the content is.
But do you think they're going to go away entirely?
Do I think they'll go away entirely? No, I don't think that they'll ever entirely go away. That's a personal opinion. Because I think that there will always be people who enjoy something about a book, but I think that novels and fiction will move into the ebook space almost entirely.
Yeah. I'm also a big believer in bookstores. We might get to that, but I would just say one thing people don't realize is like, I talk to so many people who are like, oh, I self-published my ebook on Amazon, and now I'm going to go to my local bookstore and get them to throw me a party, and it's like,
yeah,
it's not going to happen. So there's and even like when Amazon Publishing put out the 4-Hour Chef, and they made it like hardcover and $35, but nobody could see it. So I do think that the physical book still has some resonance for people who do go into bookstores, or even see it like at your friend's house or on a coffee table, like to like you like spread buzz with that item. And I think we're replacing that maybe, but we have to find ways to replace that discovery.
And part of that is another industry issue. I think you talk about sharing an ebook, and there's still so many complications to do that. You want to gift an ebook, and you have to know what device that person reads and their basis of technology and how competent they are to use it. And I think that discourages a lot of the buzz that you're talking about. But when we move towards a model, and I think that we probably will, which is DRM free, and we have and you're able to transfer files around a lot more easily, although still copyrighted, I think that will change things as well a lot. So I think that the technology and the law needs to catch up a little bit to where we are in terms of marketing and distributing.
I see you true believers in it. It's going to survive, but it's going to be different.
Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Does the advent of digital media somehow changed the format in the McLuhan sense. Books are known for hundreds of years, centuries in that format. And will the digital media revolution alter our perception of what a book consists of, what a book means, what a book is, how a story is told, what a story extends into? Because I believe it will change it. It will transmute into something else. I know that's a question and answer, nonetheless.
I think it already has somewhat, right? Like she was just saying that she was a Victorianist who didn't think that a computer file could be a book, and now we like realize that the stories are the stories.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, and you're absolutely right. My idea of story has changed. My idea of story was really narrow, and it's completely expanded in a way that's revolutionary for me as an editor and also as a reader. In terms of book, though, my definition hasn't really changed, and I think there's a reason that 39 Clues has done so well. It's because Scholastic has leveraged its experience publishing books, and I think there's certain components that will not change. Narrative arc is going to be satisfying in a way that's been satisfying for centuries. Characters that readers connect with are, the elements that make you fall in love with a book aren't going to change because at their heart, people haven't changed. So,
People have. Well, the attention span is 2 nanoseconds.
But what a great story expands that. I've seen it. Kids reading patterns, they do change. And their attention span does change. There's a lot competing for their attention. But we just anecdotally, and just because of the number of books we've sold, we know a story like this, as well as the ones all of our colleagues are publishing, capture a kid's attention, and
teen publishing has exploded. YA books are selling like exponentially over what they used to. Where I come from, it's like these kids read these books and then they come on Tumblr and they talk about them and they share about them and they share their like nail art and cupcake designs and like every possible thing that they want to sort of contribute to the world of the book. But they're reading the books first, and I think that having immediate ways to discuss and be part of the worlds of the books is making them more interesting, not less.
I think someone might pass some time with a 2-minute thing. I think you're totally right. We've all wasted time watching a cute cat on YouTube for 20 seconds do something funny. But I think a book, nothing grabs you in like a good piece of narrative fiction. It pulls you in and makes you so attached to it in a way that does expand that universe and create all of these tangential worlds that you can participate in, like on Tumblr or like on that website. So I think you have to give space for the book to do its job and be there for people to enjoy and absorb and to expel out of themselves in different and more interesting ways.
It's not only books either. I mean, if you look at like House of Cards, right? They put up 12 hours of television and like half the people I know watched it in 2 days. So like, again, the formats are changing, but long form story is actually in great health, I think. Can I say one more thing? Sorry. This was a story someone told me at a conference I went to last weekend that I thought was amazing. Have you guys heard of Mr. Penumbra's 24-hour bookstore?
I just read that.
Oh, so it's a novel about kind of tech and kind of old books, and it's amazing, and you should read it. Point being that the author of that book went to visit like a really, really high elite rare book library and saw all these giant books from like 600 years ago, and then was given a little book and was told that this was like a new technology and the typesetting, and this was like the first time that a book didn't have to be like on a stand in like a podium, right? And that this book here that was like 486 years old or something was the first time you could curl up with a book. And that was so interesting to him because we tend to think like it's always been this, and now for the first time we have to change our definition. And in fact, like curling up with a book is a newish invention in human, even in story publishing. So I just thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. I think that, change has been constant, and there's a lot of it now, but there was also a lot of it at other times.
What was the question?
I'd like to direct this question toward Nina, if that's okay.
Yeah, hi.
I know you had mentioned that fiction was probably going to be more going to ebooks. And I'm more interested in the academic side of the publishing house world.
Right.
And do you think that textbooks, I know like the Kindle came out, the Kindle DX for mainly use in the classroom.
Right.
Do you think that there is a future for textbooks to also go digital more so than they are now? Or do you think that will be a type of hardback, smelling the pages type of thing that just won't go away.
Well, your question comes at a really interesting time, I think, because we're seeing a shift away from these big catalog sources like JSTOR, for the example that I'm most familiar with. They have been reducing the number of articles that you have access to. I'm sure those of you who are in school might notice this, for the last 5 years. And I think that there is a lot less information that people can validate and has, everything that you need in the academic world to make something a legitimate paper or a legitimate piece of work to use for your own research. So I think people are turning to the book more and more, and the book in electronic format, because I certainly remember carrying textbooks and I have no interest in doing that ever again. So I think that this has never been a better time for academic publishing. I think that there is a need and a huge void for a reliable voice, and people want the convenience of an ebook, and they know that it's going to be outdated in 25 years, especially in the science and the math.
Or every year. They make you buy new textbooks every year.
Yeah, I guess they do. So I think it's a great time for academic publishing.
Yeah, probably.
I wonder what factors can contribute to a bestseller in this digital age?
A bad seller?
Bestseller.
I was like working in publishing, you guys.
Well, that's a tough one to say. I think the first thing is a good story. You have to have that. I think having the pillars that Open Road works on, and that's what I'll go on, is a combination of retail merchandising. So for us, that's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Sony, the whole gamut. It's social media, having a big social media presence and a push, and interacting with your fan space, having a big publicity push. So that is still a big part of ebook and book marketing, is publicity. Articles in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, those do something and they mean something to a lot of readers. So that's the other big part that we do. And then advertising, promotion, and marketing campaigns. So if you have all four of those things in place, and you have a good book that's topical and interesting and is catching on at the right time. I think Game of Thrones is popular because it is the culmination of many things that were leading up to Game of Thrones. Then that could give you a bestseller.
Do you think a post-production is more important than creating process?
What happens after the book is done?
Yeah.
I think you should never discount a good editor. I think an editor can take, sometimes if you ever read a bestseller before it was edited, some of the best books in the history of the English language, you will be appalled. They are terrible. So I think the production process is crucial.
In my experience, so we put together this book of 6-word memoirs, right? It had 800 contributors because they each wrote one sentence story. You understand what I'm saying? So we got this like tiny little book deal, and then the first thing we said after we signed the contract was, oh, by the way, we're going to need 800 author copies. The publisher was not very happy about that. But what I did was, wait, no, this is real good. So I wrote a letter to every single contributor. Congratulations, you are a published author. Here's some stuff you can do. You can throw yourself a party. Here's how. You can get a reading at your local bookstore. Here's how. You can get yourself interviewed on the local radio. Here's how. We gave them signs to put up at their local coffee shop. We gave them certificates that say Merry Christmas, you got a copy of my book. We gave them all this stuff. And stickers and buttons and whatever. And we mailed out 800 contributor kits, and we were in touch with them by email the whole time. That book didn't become a Times bestseller because of a story in the Wall Street Journal, right? It became a Times bestseller because instead of 1 or 2 authors on the ground, making it the biggest thing in their lives, there were 800. And as you may know about the New York Times bestseller list, it is not really a mass media. You're not looking at 1 million copies to get on there. You're looking at a couple thousand most weeks. So not every book has 800 contributors, but I find that sort of concept where you can take as many people as you can get buy-in from to feel like this project is important to them too, can be incredibly valuable. And so sometimes that just means that the author has 10,000 Twitter followers who feel like they're great friends of theirs. When Emma Straub's first book came out, I was telling people, you gotta go buy it, my friend has a book out, my friend has a book out. And someone was like, Rachel, have you ever met Emma Straub? And I was like, oh, I haven't. But I thought I had, because we had this rapport online. I have now. But and sometimes people use submission campaigns on Tumblr, right? Where you're not getting into the book even, but if it's there's a book called Public Apology, and then everybody sent in their public apologies to the blog, and then you feel like you're a part of this project. So I think that the biggest thing sometimes is the more people who feel like the success of that book is valuable to them too, not monetarily. John Green, who's a big best-selling YA author, defines effective book marketing basically as getting your book into the hands of the right readers and empowering them to share it. And I think that that's true for pretty much any kind of book.
There's a question out of that.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up John Green because it actually transitions like really nicely to the question. So from a publicity standpoint, sort of, like because all of the social media allows fans to engage directly with the authors, obviously it's sort of like benefits authors more for them to have a very active social media presence themselves. But since some authors don't naturally take to that and they're not as good at it, what advice do you have sort of for publishers to maybe compensate for that and like on their end sort of make fans bridge that connection a little bit better?
Do you guys force your authors to get online?
Absolutely not. I don't know what Suzanne Collins had for breakfast. You know, I am not following J.K. Rowling's Instagram. Obviously, those are outliers. No, we certainly, if it's something they want to do, absolutely. We will help them, we will support them, we will promote them. But, you know, in our experience, the best way to have a bestseller is to write a fantastic book and then to allow the professionals to make sure it gets in the hands of the right readers, the right bloggers, the right booksellers, the right librarians. A lot of authors do it really naturally and they love it, and that's a great way for them to connect. It's a great way for them to build their platform. But we definitely don't want authors for whom it's not a natural fit to do it. A lot of times their voice comes through in the most honest, compelling way through this. And you know, there's no point for an author to stress or spend their time or their imagination tweeting when they have a different story to tell. And it's on a case-by-case basis, but we have had enormous success with authors who can barely use a computer. And we've had enormous success with authors who won't stop tweeting. So it's really on a case-by-case basis. And there are a lot of tools available, and we want to make sure it's for the right author and the right project.
I think some publishers are not that generous. There certainly are publishers that will tell you have to. I work with a lot of publishers who more want to empower you to do it if you want to. Sorry, when I say you, I mean the authors. And so I've done like webinars and like training programs that'll live on like the Random House Author Hub, so authors can watch me talk about the best way to have a Tumblr. I think that sometimes it's a matter of helping them find one thing they feel the most comfortable on. Heidi Julovitz wrote me this great email that was like, I hate Facebook, I don't understand Twitter, Tumblr makes sense to me, that's all I'm gonna do. And I was like, great! And especially for authors who feel overwhelmed that they have to be on everything, I think if there's one thing that makes the most sense to you, if you like to cook a lot and you just wanna take Instagrams of your food and that's it, like then that's the platform for you. But I think that I love the idea that you just need a great book. I think that's sometimes true. I think of it as sort of like, it's a perfect storm, right? So like, if you're the most famous person in the world, your book will sell, no matter what. If it's the most amazing book ever written, it will sell no matter what. And usually you need a combination, right? So you need like 40% amazing story and 30% big Twitter presence and 20% profile in the Times. And if one of those things is higher, the other thing can be lower. Like, nobody has everything. But if you're a debut author or you're trying to get published and you don't have a famous name, a super hooky book, an Iowa MFA, or whatever, this is a way that you can build a platform that'll give you a leg up on other people who have other things you don't have. And this one is free.
And I would encourage authors to ask their publishers for help, because there's a lot of tools available, and I know at Open Road we have a lot of authors who are deceased or, as James Salter demonstrated, using a typewriter, so not digital savvy. But I would never think of that as a block to having a social media presence. I have an author, Jonathan Carroll, who writes a lot of slipstream fiction, which is definitely a niche genre. He is nominated for a lot of world fantasy. He has a very magical realism feel to his writing, which is not mainstream. And he was always sending me these beautiful photos that he would find in beautiful quotes, because he just wanted to send them to me. So what we started to do was to put them on Tumblr. So we have something called Jonathan Carroll Stories, and it is a place where we post all of the things that he finds. And a tool like Tumblr or Twitter or Facebook, it's so easy to use for us. It's not a big time commitment to do this, and we're happy to do it for him. And now we have, there's thousands of followers on that. It's one of the top 25 drivers of traffic to his page. So I would always tell an author that they can ask for help. I think there's a perception that they have to do it all alone, and that's not true.
So the bottom line is the good story will always sell.
No. The good story will always survive the march of time.
Okay.
The good story is a very good indicator for selling. I mean, there are great books that tank. I'm not going to deny that there are great books that tank. I think that the great story will always connect with its right readers if they find it.
And eventually it'll be backlist, and it'll have a second chance.
Especially if Open Road picks it up. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always tell authors or like small publishers or even like big publishers who just don't know how much time they have to spend on different things is like, and I think I'm a little more cynical maybe than you guys, but I think that ultimately you can't think of marketing your book as like the afterthought if you have time or if you feel like it. If you just wanted to write for the sake of writing, you would write in a journal by your bed. If you're publishing a book, that's because you wanted to find an audience. And you can't think of reaching that audience as icing on top. You have to think of reaching that audience as a part of what publishing is, I believe. And when you look at it that way, it is also less daunting to people. Like when people tell me that they don't want to tweet, I'm like, why'd you write this book? And they're like, because I have a lot to say and I want people to hear it. And I'm like, cool, I know some ways you can do that. So I think that if you're not daunted by it and you just look at it as an extension of like writing and reaching an audience, then that's part of what we're all here to do.
So following up on that, from an industry perspective, do you see the trend, especially to the publishers, self-selecting or favoring socially savvy authors, and following that, whether that has any impact on the overall quality of books, whether that's
overall quality?
Yeah. So let's say on average, if the industry starts to favor socially savvy authors because they're more marketable, or whatever that means,
Right.
then does that have a negative impact on the overall quality of the books in general?
That's a fantastic question that I'm answering from the position of being an editor at one of the largest publishers in the world. So my answer is going to differ from other people's, but my answer is it's not affecting our decision making at all. So I get probably, on average, 30 submissions a week from agents. There's a reason I'm in publishing. I don't know how many that is a year. Anyone? It's a lot.
A lot.
And 30s, yeah, it can be low. And by the time I put them on my Kindle, I've already forgotten who wrote it, what agent it came from, sometimes even what it's called, let alone how many Twitter followers the writer has, which is something the agent sometimes puts in the cover letter. I am just reading it for the story.
And you're also, sorry, finish.
If I fall in love with your story, if I fall in love with your characters and your voice, I'm going to be an incredible advocate for that book. I'm going to present it to my colleagues. They're going to fall in love with it. And we're going to figure out the best way to package the story and present it to readers. If you have a Twitter platform, fantastic. We're going to help you use that, leverage it, and expand it. If you don't, we'll help you build one. If it's something you don't want to do, we'll figure out other ways. And we've been doing it the same way for a really long time, and our toolkit has expanded, but the way we select books, the way we fall in love with books, the way we share them with kids has not changed.
I think that you have a really amazing job, right? Because you're a fiction publisher of stories to capture hearts, and that's one kind of publishing. Mm-hmm. If what you're doing is publishing like self-help books or diet books or fitness books, where it's why should you listen to this person's take on blueberries instead of that person's take on blueberries, then platform is a whole separate issue. And so I think that fiction publishing, especially at an awesome house, can be very much about falling in love with a story. It depends what you're doing. But I also, again, I keep going back to these like 500 years ago things, but like it used to be that the only people who were publishing books were like rich people who had the time and the skills, who were white men. And like the overall publishing industry suffered for that as well. So like there have always been different kinds of people who are more able to reach an audience, and I would argue that it is more democratized now than it has ever been. If you have 100,000 Twitter followers and it's not because you're a football star, it's probably because you're a really funny writer. Like, it's not a separate thing.
Yeah, and when I meet with the editors and they're telling me about, so I work on the marketing side, when I hear about the books, the editors don't tell me really anything about the author unless they live really far away and it might be hard to talk to them, or they don't use a computer and I have to go through their assistant. What they tell me about is their book. So that's what I get excited about, and that's what I start building my campaigns on.
Also, if you went on Tumblr right now and searched the tag search for James Salter, you would find like hundreds of thousands of exuberant fan posts. And it's not because he's interacting with them. It's just because literary culture does not only depend on the author. It depends on the readers, the librarians, the booksellers, the reviewers, the whole.
Yeah, librarians is actually a really good point that we haven't talked about at all, which maybe I'll segue into that a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So librarians, I think, are from a marketing perspective, they do so much. They are the champions and the cheerleaders of all of our titles. For the backlist, they have so much excitement and enthusiasm for these titles being available for people, and they're the ones who are making that kind of connection that is even better, I hate to say it, than social media, because they're telling you one-on-one why you should read this book, and they're creating shelves that are dedicated just towards their editorial selections, and they live and breathe books and the excitement of old books and then bringing things back and book culture, and they're indispensable. I can't imagine a world without books. I do think that libraries will move towards a digital mostly space. I think I'm actually from Canada, and Canadian libraries are very book free. They are predominantly places filled with computers, and they have lots of lessons on learning how to use computers. It's a place where a lot of new immigrants will go and learn English skills, so it's more a skill-based tool acquiring space that's free and public for everyone to use, and there are very few books left in there. But when they do, and when you get into that book section, or you go to the New York Public Library and you want to download an ebook, which you can do from their website, and you can do it for free, that there's no better place to find a book to discover.
Yeah, I happen to know this because I'm going to the American Library Association conference tomorrow morning. There are more public libraries in the United States of America than McDonald's and Starbucks put together. So just like think about that in terms of like, we're so New York focused here, or I am, and like think about the like in every city and every town and every village. My boyfriend's from a one stoplight town with like 2,000 residents. They have like a gas station, a diner, and a public library. And so these are the people, right, who whether they meet at this conference that I'm going to, or they meet online, or they go to library school, whatever, but like, and then they shoot out all over this country and they build this like network of people who are there to talk about books.
Yeah.
So that's like your marketing team, the invisible marketing team.
And it used to be that in publishing they didn't get a lot of respect, and like at Book Expo there would be like free books for like reviewers and booksellers, but not for librarians, and that's also something that's changed a lot in the last 10 years, I think.
And they'll also be the ones to tell people how to use these technologies, how to use an e-reader and turn it on and download the books,
your Kindle books and all that.
Whatever it is. So yeah.
That's another like big thing that's going on. This might be sort of a tangent, but like the technology and then the like business side of the technology and then the people using them has like not all been connected. So like if you go to your library, you can get like a Penguin book but not a Simon & Schuster book, or then the Simon & Schuster joined but the Macmillan books are only available for a week, or like this has not been fixed. Right? I mean,
no, it's fixing, but it's not been fixed.
And this is one of these things, again, I get so huffy about the antagonism where people are like, publishing's so stupid. If they weren't all dinosaurs hanging out in the Hamptons, then all the ebooks would be available now. And like, these are people who don't know about DRM, about these deals, about like, I just think that that's something that is ripe for disruption or like fixing. But first you have to understand why it is the way it is, and it's not because we're stupid, and it's not because we're dinosaurs, and it's not because we've had too many margins.
We're on the Hamptons.
We're in the Hamptons.
Many of the people on the audience here, students, will probably not become authors. Maybe they will not become librarians, but many of them want to work in book publishing. What skills they have to leave the university with to be successful or to get the good position in a book publishing?
Well, I can speak to the marketing side. I think one of the huge shifts in marketing that I've seen is that we're moving towards content marketing. So that means marketers are creating pieces, overseeing pieces. We work really closely with the video team, for example. I do not have a video background at all. To create pieces that can be distributed throughout the internet. So being able to write is a really important skill. Using Photoshop to create images, create GIFs. If you're looking for an entry-level position, that's a lot of what I think that you'll be doing if you're working on the social media and the marketing side, is creating things that can be distributed and talk about your books in new and more visual and internet-friendly ways.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I think it's very much about having a foot in each world. You need to learn a bunch of digital stuff. You should learn Photoshop. You should learn whatever. And like, well, I'm sure a lot of you are more technical than I am. If you can code a little bit, that's really helpful. Like every tech thing you can be, but you should also try to understand the industry you want to get into, and sort of the history and how it is now and why it's that way. And that's how you're going to be best equipped to fix the problems there. Also, like an author, I think that if you don't have a Harvard degree or you don't have whatever, you can build a social media presence. And I certainly, when people apply to work at Tumblr, I mean, I look at their social media presences, and that's going to be a lot of what you're doing in an entry-level marketing job especially, but editorial too sometimes. And people have got, like, there's this woman named Melody Kramer who was an associate producer at Fresh Air and the NPR show, and she was the web editor, and then she was doing the Twitter and the Tumblr, and she got incredibly popular where everyone knew who she was. They loved her writing. There was an article on like Neiman Journalism Lab that said, "Meet the most popular woman at Fresh Air. It's not Terry Gross." And like, she can get any job she wants now. Like, and again, it was genuine. She built the audience by being really good at this stuff. But I think that there are more ways than ever to prove that you're good at this stuff besides just the lines on your resume.
Absolutely. In terms of editorial, I don't think the essential skills have changed that much. It's having a passion for storytelling, at least, you know, in the various forms in fiction. Having great taste and being willing to defend it, being a fierce advocate for a story you love, for an author you love, even when there are people telling you not to, and then just figuring out what is the best way to bring a story to life and help an author realize his or her vision. So I don't think that's, you know, changed very much since, let's say, like the Maxwell Perkins days, but a lot has changed in terms of getting your foot in the door. So publishing is really competitive. It's really hard to get an entry-level position. And sometimes having the most stellar resume isn't enough. And all the things Rachel said are absolutely true. Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook are great ways to become part of the publishing community. I know a lot of people who got internships because they were friendly with authors. They met them at an event or at a library event in some random town, and then started tweeting at each other. Basically, you know, your passion for books and your passion for publishing, if it's genuine, you know, it can rise to the surface and it be amplified by various forms of social media. And it doesn't always work, but when it does, it can be pretty incredible and pretty magical.
Show up at bookstores, show up at book events, show up anywhere where you think the people who have the jobs you want are going to be, like, not to stalk them, but to like get to know them, and like you'll probably enjoy those things. There are people who I like feel like I'm friends with because they came to a lot of Housing Works events. Also, like, while we're in the trust tree and I'm looking at all these beautiful young women, I wish I had asked for more money when I started. It's a lot easier to ask for more money in the first place than to get like a 4% raise every year.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really important, and like, don't be afraid of it. Like, if they want you, they're not gonna unchoose you. And I'm not gonna say the two words you think I'm gonna say now.
Time for last question.
With the explosion of self-publishing, it seems harder and harder every day for a literary agency to really justify maybe their existence. What do you think the future of the literary agency is going to be with so many tools available to authors to self-publish?
Great question.
Do you want me to take that?
I think we all have something to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yes, everybody can self-publish. That's great. And you hear about the people who are incredibly successful at it. Yeah. And most people are not. I think that what we're losing, right, everyone's like, no more gatekeepers, and that's true. So that means that when an audience is looking for a book to read, they have no way of knowing if it's decent or not, right? So I think that the role of editors and the role of agents is really incredibly important. It's how you're going to get yourself sort of vaulted above the millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of books out there. But self-publishing is great if that's what you want to do. I mean, I think that if you want to be a marketer, a designer, a distributor, a publicist, if you want to be all those things, go for it. If you want to write books and have somebody else take care of the nitty-gritty, then an agent is a great thing to have.
Yeah, and I don't just think the nitty-gritty. I think there are people who have experience to think about the strategy behind things. I think self-publishing makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, and that's why they do it. But I think their expectations need to be tempered, and the media has done a bit of a disservice to promote only these top-selling books, because that really is, I mean, it's like under 1% of what we're seeing out there. And it's also in genres that you might not write in. If you don't write probably erotica, romance, or maybe sometimes science fiction, paranormal, you're going to have a harder time in self-publishing, I think, or in finding an audience for yourself. So I don't think that publishers just do the nitty-gritty. I think they expand and grow on your story and make it something that you didn't even know was possible, and make it even better than you thought it was ever going to be.
Absolutely, and that process generally wouldn't even start without the help of the literary agents. They perform such an invaluable service. Not only are they incredible at identifying talent, I don't have time to read all the submissions that would come to me without the agents. I read submissions only on nights and weekends, which means I have a really scintillating social life. So I really depend on agents not only to find great talent, but their skill set is incredible. They identify talent, they shape talent. A lot of the times, by the time the manuscript comes to me, it's in much better shape than it would have been otherwise, because they have incredible editorial insights. And then
they ask for more money, so you don't have to.
They're absolutely important advocates for you. They also have this magical sort of matchmaking ability to figure out who's the best editor for your book and who's the best publishing house for your book. And that's something an author can't necessarily do on his or her own. It's something they shouldn't necessarily. I know I have sort of a romanticized vision of this process, and that's a luxury of working at one of the largest publishers, but I want my authors to spend all their time writing and reading and daydreaming and getting me their stuff on time. I don't want them researching and figuring out, oh God, who's doing middle grade paranormal sports stories, or who's doing magical realism set at gymnastics summer camp.
Ooh, I'd read that.
Yeah. And the agent knows everyone in publishing. Not only are they going to be incredibly strong advocates for you and your book, they're going to make sure it gets in the hand of that editor who's looking for, ghost bats in medieval France. And it's incredible when it works out. So agents are going to be around. We work really closely with them, and I totally am indebted to what they do.
I don't think it's the agents who are worried. I think the agents have more manuscripts than ever. I think that publishers are worried. I mean, they're not worried about you. They're worried about Stephen King, who could self-publish tomorrow and make all the money himself. I think that the people who the publishers have done all this work to build up over the 10 years, who are their own brands, sometimes leave. And so I think that where they can afford to hire a freelance editor, a lawyer, or whatever. So I'm not denying that there is some concern, I think, that the traditional publishers may not hold all the talent, but if you're trying to get a foot in the door, you'd be very lucky to get an agent. I don't think they're worried.
And I think that's Stephen King wouldn't be Stephen King without his publisher.
He wouldn't, but he could leave now and take all the money for himself if he were an asshole.
Right. But I think that that's what publishers can do. They can create people of that magnitude and of that influence.
And that's actually a very nice ending sentence for me. Why do we actually still need publishers?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, really? Why?
Okay.
Yeah, we just said, right? To make the books better, to help them find the right audience, to have people who specialize in distribution, in design, in marketing. I mean, I'm not down on self-publishing. If you want to be a small business, you can totally do it. But you can't just be a writer and self-publish successfully, because publishing is so much more than writing.
You need experts for that to support you.
Yeah, I mean, or you can be really good at it yourself, but you have to be, right, a writer, an editor, a graphic designer, a contract lawyer, you have to do everything. And so publishers have experts in all the different things that you need. And
we do a good job. I mean, you may think you'll do a good job, but we'll do a really good job.
And because they are all full-time jobs.
Right.
even if you were only working on one book, there's absolutely no way, well, you can't edit yourself for reasons we can get into another time. That would be difficult intellectual exercise, but you can't be a full-time marketer, publicist, graphic designer, sales rep, manufacturer. The love and attention and care we put into our books. The reasons why my job extends way past the 9 to 5, it's just because it's more than one person can do, and publishers, for centuries to develop these expertise, these skill sets, that it does things to your books, your stories you didn't think possible. So I definitely don't think traditional publishing is going anywhere. I think there's been a challenge for us to grow and adapt and evolve, and there's definitely going to be a learning curve, but we're going to stick around.
Not all of them.
So long live.
No, this is what we're here to talk about. I think the publishers that do a great job and are really flexible and learn from their mistakes will succeed, and some publishers will not. And some self-publishing enterprises will be hugely successful, or micro-publishing, or online publishing, or Kickstarter publishing. There's not just two things, and they're not at odds with each other. There's a really rich ecosystem of options for every author and every story at different points in their careers. And that's great, too.
And that's a great, actually, statement about the disruption actually gives a lot of opportunities more than there used to be, say, 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, or 3.
Yeah. Then we all agree, and let's give applause to our speakers.